The hidden truth. The windward burst from the Obsidian Dawn's cargo bay like a projectile, engines flaring as Reed pushed them to maximum acceleration. Behind them, the larger vessel was already under attack from the hunter ship that had returned, its weapons systems targeting the cargo bay area specifically. "Hang on," Reed called out as he executed a series of evasive maneuvers. The G-forces would have pinned a normal human to their seat, but the windward's inertial dampeners, another of Reed's modifications, kept the worst of it at bay. Lyra gripped the edge of her seat, her face pale but determined. The portable bioelectric stabilizer was still functioning, but the indicator lights were flashing yellow, a warning that it was approaching critical levels. "What about Captain Kinseth?" she asked, her voice strained. Reed's expression hardened. "She gave us our opening. There was nothing more I could do." He didn't mention the last image from the external cameras, Kinseth falling as the Phantom's shot struck her, the cargo bay filling with weapons fire as the ship's security forces engaged the intruders. "Commander, we have pursuit," Vex announced. "The hunter ship has disengaged from the Obsidian Dawn and is on an intercept course." "Show me," Reed demanded. A tactical display materialized on the cockpit viewport, overlaying the starfield beyond. The hunter ship, the same Barrow-class interceptor they had encountered earlier, was closing rapidly, its superior engines giving it a significant advantage. "Time to intercept?" Reed asked, already plotting potential escape routes. "At current velocities, 2 minutes, 17 seconds, Vex calculated. They are charging weapons systems." Reed made a split-second decision. "Prepare for emergency jump to hyperspace." "Inadvisable, Commander," Vex objected. "Navigational calculations are incomplete. Random jump has 73% probability of intercepting a stellar body or gravitational distortion." "We don't have a choice," Reed insisted. "Calculate minimum safe distance and execute jump the moment we reach it." As the windward strained toward the hyperspace threshold, the hunter ship fired its first salvo, a precision shot that grazed their aft shields, causing the ship to shudder violently. "Shields at 81%, Vex reported. "Second volley incoming." Reed executed a rolling dive, narrowly avoiding the next barrage. "Status on hyperspace calculations. Minimum safe distance in 27 seconds, Vex replied. "However, pursuit vessel will be in optimal firing position in 17 seconds. "We won't blast another direct hit," Reed muttered, pushing the engines beyond safe parameters. The ship groaned in protest, structural integrity warnings flashing across his console. "Commander," Lyra called from behind him, her voice stronger than before. "I think I can help." Reed glanced back to see her disconnecting from the portable stabilizer, her luminescent veins pulsing with increasing brightness. "What are you doing?" he demanded. "You need the stabilizer to live, yes," she acknowledged. "But right now we need to survive the next 20 seconds more urgently." She moved unsteadily to the cockpit, placing her hands on the ship's secondary control panel. "Your shields need reinforcement. I can provide that, temporarily." Before Reed could protest further, Lyra closed her eyes and released her carefully controlled bioelectric field. Violet energy flowed from her fingertips into the ship's systems, spreading like liquid lightning through the shield generators. The shield readouts immediately spiked, strength increasing by almost 40%. "Remarkable," Vex commented, the closest to surprise Reed had ever heard from the ship's usually unflappable system. "Shield harmonics are reconfiguring to a pattern the hunter ship's weapons aren't calibrated for." The hunter fired again, a devastating volley that would have crippled the windward moments before. Instead, the enhanced shields absorbed the impact, flaring with a violet tinge as Lyra's bioelectric field distributed the energy across their surface. "Hyperspace threshold reached," Vex announced. "Emergency jump in 3, 2, 1. The stars stretched into lines as the windward leaped into hyperspace, leaving the hunter ship behind. The violent transition rattled the ship, loose equipment clattering to the floor as the fabric of space-time distorted around them. Then sudden calm as they stabilized in hyperspace. Reed released his white-knuckled grip on the controls, turning quickly to check on Lyra. She had collapsed to the floor, her bioelectric field fluctuating wildly, the luminescent veins beneath her skin pulsing erratically. Lyra! He was at her side instantly, cradling her head. Her skin burned with unnatural heat, her eyes unfocused. Vex medical assessment. Cerulean physiology in critical distress, Vex reported. Bioelectric field destabilizing. Without proper containment, cascade failure of the central nervous system will occur within approximately 12 minutes. The stabilizer, Reed said, reaching for the portable device Lyra had disconnected from. But a quick check confirmed his fears. The unit had been damaged during their escape, its power cells depleted. Is there anything on board that can help her? Reed demanded. Negative, Commander. The Windward is not equipped with the specialized equipment required to stabilize cerulean bioelectric fields. Reed swore fiercely, his mind racing. Lyra had sacrificed her own recovery, perhaps her life, to ensure their escape. Now they were in random hyperspace, with no immediate destination and no way to treat her condition. Where are we headed? He asked Vex, still supporting Lyra's trembling form. Current trajectory will exit hyperspace in the Calidus system in approximately 47 minutes. Nearest medical facility with potential capability to treat cerulean physiology would be Calidus Prime Central Hospital. Too long, Reed muttered. Lyra wouldn't survive the journey, not in her current state. He needed an alternative, something immediate. An idea struck him, desperate, dangerous, but possibly their only option. Vex, can you detect the data chip Captain Kinseth gave me? The one with coordinates for the Cerberus facility. Affirmative. Data chip is in your left breast pocket. Reed carefully laid Lyra down on the cockpit floor, then retrieved the chip and inserted it into the ship's navigation system. Analyze these coordinates. How far from our current position? There was a brief pause as Vex processed the data. Coordinates indicate a location in the Hephaestus Nebula, approximately 12 minutes from our current position in hyperspace. Course adjustment is possible. Make the adjustment, Reed ordered. Maximum safe velocity. As the Windward altered course toward the mysterious Cerberus facility, Reed returned to Lyra's side. Her condition was deteriorating rapidly, the violet energy of her bioelectric field now visibly escaping her body in erratic bursts. Stay with me, he urged, taking her hand. It felt simultaneously too hot and too cold, as though her body couldn't regulate its own temperature anymore. Just a few more minutes. We're getting you help. Her eyes flickered open, focusing on him with visible effort. You're trusting Cerberus, she managed, her voice weak. I'm trusting that they want to keep you alive as much as I do, Reed corrected. After that, we reassess. A ghost of a smile crossed her face. Pragmatic. I prefer to think of it as adaptive, he replied, attempting to match her lightness despite his concern. A trait we apparently share. She squeezed his hand weakly. Reed, if I don't make it, that's not happening. He cut her off firmly. Listen, she insisted. The enzyme sample. It's hidden on Novaria Station. Maintenance Sector 17, Environmental Control Junction. Biometric lock keyed to my genetic signature. Reed frowned. Why are you telling me this? Because someone needs to know, she replied, her breathing becoming more labored. Someone I trust. If the hegemony finds it, Project Ascension continues. If it's destroyed without proper containment, the resulting biohazard could affect an entire sector. The implications were staggering. Not only was Lyra carrying the knowledge of how to complete the genetic integration process in her mind, but a critical physical component was hidden back on the station they had fled. The hunters had been pursuing only half their objective. We'll go back for it, Reed promised. Together, once you're stabilized. She nodded slightly, her eyes drifting closed as her strength faded. The bioelectric discharges were becoming more frequent, more intense, her body's desperate attempts to regulate a system on the verge of collapse. "Commander," Vex announced, "we are approaching the coordinates. Preparing to exit hyperspace. Any signs of a facility, a station, anything?" Reed asked, not taking his eyes off Lyra. "Unable to determine while in hyperspace. Sensors will activate upon transition." Reed carefully lifted Lyra, carrying her to the medical bay where he secured her on the examination table. Her time was running out. If the Cerberus coordinates led to nothing, or if the facility was abandoned, she wouldn't survive long enough for them to find another option. Exiting hyperspace in 3, 2, 1. The familiar sensation of transition washed over them as the Windward dropped back into normal space. Reed braced himself against the wall of the medical bay, keeping one hand steady on Lyra's shoulder to prevent her from being jostled by the ship's movement. "Sensor sweep complete," Vex reported after a moment. "Detecting a facility embedded in an asteroid approximately 7,000 kilometers ahead. The asteroid is heavily shielded and would be virtually undetectable without precise coordinates." Relief flooded through Reed. "Are they scanning us? Any defense systems active?" "The facility is running passive scans only. No weapons systems targeting us. They appear to be waiting for identification." "Transmit the authentication codes from Kinseth's data chip," Reed ordered, "and open a communication channel." There was a brief pause before Vex responded. "Authentication accepted. Channel open." "This is Commander Darius Reed of the vessel Windward," he announced. "I have a critical medical emergency. A Cerulean in bioelectric destabilization. Request immediate assistance." The response was immediate, a professional female voice that reminded him somewhat of Kinseth. "Commander Reed, this is Cerberus Facility Hephaestus. We've been expecting you. Transmitting docking instructions now. Medical team is standing by." "Acknowledged," Reed replied. "Vex, get us docked as quickly as possible." The Windward accelerated toward the asteroid, which now revealed a concealed docking bay as massive doors slid open in its surface. Reed returned to Lyra's side, noting with alarm that her bioelectric discharges had become weaker, more sporadic. Her system wasn't fighting anymore, but failing. "Almost there," he told her, though he wasn't sure she could hear him anymore. "Just hold on a little longer." The Windward slipped through the docking bay doors with precision, settling onto a landing pad with barely a shudder. Through the viewport, Reed could see a medical team already rushing toward them, equipment in hand. "Equalizing pressure and gravity," Vex announced. "Docking complete. External atmosphere is safe for human respiration." Reed didn't wait for the loading ramp to fully extend. The moment there was enough clearance, he carried Lyra's now unconscious form outside, meeting the medical team halfway. "Cerulean female, severe bioelectric destabilization following radiation exposure and field overexertion," he reported rapidly as they transferred her to a hovering medical platform. "She was partially treated aboard the Obsidian Dawn before our evacuation." The lead medical officer, a stern-faced woman with cybernetic enhancements visible around her eyes, nodded briskly. "We received preliminary data from Captain Kinseth before communication was lost. We're prepared for this." They moved quickly through the facility, Reed keeping pace with the medical team as they rushed Lyra to what appeared to be a specialized treatment center. The equipment he glimpsed was unlike anything he'd seen before. Advanced, purpose-built, clearly designed specifically for dealing with exotic physiologies. At the entrance to the treatment room, the medical officer stopped him with a firm hand. "You can't go further. The bioelectric stabilization process requires a sterile environment with specific electromagnetic shielding." Reed reluctantly stopped. "Will she make it?" The officer's expression softened slightly. "If we'd been even 5 minutes later, no. As it is," she glanced at the readings from Lyra's medical platform, "we have a good chance. The Cerulean physiology is remarkably resilient, and Ms. Vosh appears to have an unusually strong will to survive. How long will the treatment take?" At least 6 hours for the initial stabilization. Full recovery will be measured in days. She gestured to a nearby seating area. There's no point in waiting here. Someone will come for you when there's news. With that, she disappeared into the treatment room, the doors sealing behind her with a soft hiss. For several moments, Reed stood motionless, staring at the closed doors. The adrenaline that had carried him through their escape was fading, leaving bone-deep exhaustion in its wake. His ribs ached where the Vexillion had struck him back on Novaria Station. A lifetime ago, it seemed now. Commander Reed. He turned to find a tall, thin man with a scholarly appearance watching him from a respectful distance. Despite the man's unassuming demeanor, Reed noted the subtle signs of military training in his posture. I'm Dr. Julian Reeves, director of this facility. The man introduced himself. I understand you've had a rather eventful journey. Reed's eyes narrowed slightly. That's one way to put it. Reeves nodded, seemingly unsurprised by Reed's wariness. I imagine you have questions, and concerns about whether coming here was the right decision. He gestured down the corridor. Perhaps we could discuss them somewhere more comfortable. Our medical team is the best in the sector. Ms. Vosh couldn't be in better hands. After a moment's hesitation, Reed nodded. There was nothing he could do for Lyra now except wait, and he needed information about Cerberus, about Project Ascension, about the increasingly complex web they were caught in. Reeves led him to a small but comfortable conference room with a viewport looking out on the nebula beyond. The swirling gases of the Hephaestus Nebula created an otherworldly backdrop, shifting patterns of purple and gold against the blackness of space. Please sit, Reeves offered, indicating a chair. You must be exhausted. Can I have something brought for you? Food, water. Information would be more satisfying, Reed replied, though he did take the offered seat, starting with what exactly Cerberus is and why you're so interested in Lyra Vosh. Reeves smiled faintly as he sat across from Reed. Direct. I appreciate that. He tapped a control on the table, and a holographic display appeared between them. The Cerberus logo, a three-headed hound from Earth mythology. Cerberus began 15 years ago, as Captain Kinseth may have told you. A group of hegemony officials, military officers, and scientists who discovered various illegal operations being conducted with full government sanction. Operations that violated not just interstellar law, but basic ethical principles. Like Project Ascension, Reed surmised. Among others, yes. Reeves manipulated the hologram, which shifted to show various facilities across multiple star systems. The hegemony has been pursuing genetic and cybernetic enhancement programs for decades, always in secret, always pushing boundaries that the civilized galaxy agreed should not be crossed. And you what? Decided to form a shadow organization to fight them. Reed's tone was skeptical. With ships and facilities that clearly require massive resources. Resources we have, thanks to supporters throughout the sector who share our concerns about hegemony overreach, Reeves replied calmly. Many of them are highly placed, with access to technology, funding, and intelligence, but they prefer to remain anonymous, for obvious reasons. So Cerberus is what? Vigilantes. Rebels. Watchdogs, Reeves corrected. We monitor, we document, and when necessary, we intervene. Our goal isn't to overthrow the hegemony. That would create a power vacuum with potentially disastrous consequences for the sector. We aim to hold them accountable, to ensure that certain lines aren't crossed. Reed considered this. It aligned with what Kinseth had told him, and with the actions he'd witnessed aboard the Obsidian Dawn. And Lyra, what's your interest in her? Reeves's expression grew more serious. Ms. Vosh represents both a tremendous opportunity and a significant danger. Her work on genetic integration between Cerulean and human DNA is groundbreaking. The scientific achievement alone is remarkable. But in the hegemony's hands, it becomes a weapon, a way to create soldiers with capabilities no natural human could match. You want to make sure they don't get it, Reed summarized. Yes. But more than that, we want to ensure that her research isn't simply destroyed. Reeves leaned forward slightly. Think about it, Commander. The same techniques that could create super soldiers could also treat genetic disorders, repair neural damage, extend human lifespans. Ms. Vosh's work has immense potential for positive application if it's developed ethically with proper oversight. It was a compelling argument, and one that Reed had considered himself. The line between beneficial technology and dangerous weapons was often simply a matter of intent and application. And you believe Cerberus can provide that oversight? He asked. We believe we can protect Ms. Vosh while she decides for herself what should be done with her research, Reeves replied. The choice should be hers, not the hegemony's, and not ours. We're offering safety, resources, and freedom to determine her own path forward. Reed studied the man carefully, looking for signs of deception. Reeves met his gaze steadily, apparently comfortable with the scrutiny. What about Captain Kinseth? Reed asked finally. The last I saw, she was under fire from Vex's operatives. A shadow passed over Reeves's face. We lost contact with the Obsidian Dawn shortly after you escaped. Based on our tracking, the ship managed to jump to hyperspace, but we haven't been able to establish communication. Captain Kinseth is resourceful. If anyone could survive such a situation, it's her. But we simply don't know yet. Reed nodded slowly. Despite their brief acquaintance, he had developed a grudging respect for Kinseth. Her sacrifice to ensure their escape had been genuine. Of that much, at least, he was certain. There's something else you should know, Reed said after a moment. The enzyme sample, the physical component needed for the integration process. It's still on Novaria Station. Reeves's eyebrows rose slightly, the first indication of genuine surprise Reed had seen from him. Ms. Vosh told you this just before we arrived here. She was concerned she might not survive. The director was silent for a moment, processing this new information. That complicates matters. If the hegemony discovers its location, they won't, Reed assured him. It's secured with a biometric lock keyed to Lyra's genetic signature, but it does mean that eventually we'll need to retrieve it. It's too dangerous to leave there indefinitely. Agreed, Reeves said. But that's a problem for after Ms. Vosh recovers. For now, you both need rest and recovery. He stood, indicating the conversation was concluding. You're welcome to return to your ship if you prefer, but we have guest quarters available. And I suspect you might want to remain close until Ms. Vosh's condition stabilizes. Reed rose as well, his body protesting the movement after the day's exertions. I'll stay, but my ship remains ready for immediate departure. Reeves nodded, understanding the implicit message. Reed's trust extended only so far. Of course, someone will show you to quarters, and you'll be notified immediately of any change in Ms. Vosh's condition. As promised, a staff member appeared to escort Reed to a comfortable suite of rooms not far from the medical facility. The accommodations were simple but well-appointed, with a viewport facing the nebula and a communication terminal that he was assured could connect him directly to the medical team at any time. Left alone, Reed finally allowed himself to acknowledge the extent of his exhaustion. His body ached from the various fights and escapes of the past day, and his mind was a whirlwind of questions and half-formed plans. He checked in briefly with Vex, confirming that the Windward was secure and that the ship's systems were monitoring the Cerberus facility for any sign of threat. Then, despite his intention to remain alert, he fell into a deep sleep almost the moment he lay down on the bed. Reed awoke to the soft chime of the communication terminal. Instantly alert, he checked the time. He had slept for nearly 7 hours, longer than he had intended. Commander Reed, a voice came through the terminal. This is Dr. Mira Isan from Medical. Ms. Vosh is stable and asking for you. Relief washed over him. I'll be right there. He took a moment to refresh himself in the suite's hygiene station before heading to the medical facility. The Cerberus base was larger than he had initially realized, with multiple levels built into the asteroid. The staff he passed nodded respectfully, but asked no questions. Either they had been briefed on his presence, or they were accustomed to unexpected visitors. At the medical facility, Dr. Isan, a middle-aged woman with a dark complexion and features of someone from the Earth subcontinent regions, greeted him with a professional smile. Ms. Vosh has responded exceptionally well to treatment, she reported as she led him through the facility. Her bioelectric field has stabilized, and the radiation damage is responding to regenerative therapy. She's weak, but fully conscious and cognitively intact. Longer-term prognosis, Reed asked. Excellent. Ceruleans have remarkable regenerative capabilities once their bioelectric field is properly balanced. I anticipate a full recovery within 3 to 4 days. They reached a private recovery room where Lyra was sitting up in bed, her violet skin now glowing with a healthier sheen. The luminescent veins beneath pulsed with a steady rhythm, and though she still looked tired, her eyes were clear and alert. "You made it," she said when she saw him, a genuine smile lighting her features. "We both did," Reed replied, moving to her bedside. "Thanks to your shield enhancement. That was quite a trick." "A desperate one," she admitted. "Not something I'd care to repeat anytime soon." She glanced at Dr. Isan. "Could we have a moment?" The doctor nodded. "Of course, just don't overtire yourself." She gave Reed a pointed look before departing, closing the door behind her. Once they were alone, Lyra's expression grew more serious. "So, Cerberus, what do you think?" "They saved your life," Reed pointed out. "That earns them some consideration." "But not trust," she surmised. "Let's say, cautious optimism." He pulled a chair closer to her bed and sat down. "I spoke with their director, Reeves. Their story matches what Kinseth told us. Former hegemony people who broke away over ethical concerns, now monitoring and occasionally intervening in projects like Ascension. And they want my research. They want to ensure it's used ethically, or so they claim," Reed corrected. "Reeves insisted the choice of what to do with it should be yours." Lyra considered this, absently tracing one of the luminescent veins on her arm. "That's not what I expected. No. The hegemony wants my research as a weapon. The consortium would want it for profit. I assumed Cerberus would want it destroyed." She looked up at him. "Having choices is an unfamiliar luxury after months of simply trying to stay alive." "Speaking of which," Reed said, lowering his voice slightly, "I told Reeves about the enzyme sample on Noveria. Not its exact location, but that it exists, and that we'll need to retrieve it." Lyra nodded, unsurprised. It was the right call. If something had happened to me, someone needed to know. It's too dangerous to leave unsecured indefinitely. Dangerous enough that the hegemony is willing to commit significant resources to recover it, Reed noted. "The hunter that followed us from the Obsidian Dawn, that was no ordinary operative. Kinseth identified him as Inquisitor Tarkus Vex." Lyra's expression darkened at the name. "Vex, the hegemony's premier problem solver, if he's personally involved in the hunt." She trailed off, the implications clear. "Then the stakes are even higher than we thought," Reed finished. "Which brings us to our next move. Once you're recovered, do we stay here with Cerberus, or make our own way?" It was the central question, the one that would determine their path forward. Lyra didn't answer immediately, instead looking past Reed to the viewport where the nebula's swirling colors created patterns of light and shadow across the room. "What would you do," she asked finally, "if this were solely your decision?" Reed considered the question carefully. "I'd verify Cerberus's claims independently before committing to any alliance. Trust, but verify, as an old Earth saying goes. They have resources we could use, but every organization has its own agenda, no matter how noble its stated purpose. And in the meantime, we recover the enzyme sample from Noveria before Vex or the hegemony discover its location. Having it secure gives us leverage and options." Lyra nodded slowly. That's essentially what I was thinking as well. A small smile touched her lips. It seems we're aligned in our cautious paranoia. I prefer to think of it as practical survival instinct, Reed replied, returning her smile. But yes, we appear to be on the same page. She reached out, taking his hand in a gesture of surprising intimacy. Thank you. For saving me on Noveria. For getting us here. For not abandoning me when it would have been the easier choice. Reed found himself momentarily at a loss for words, uncomfortably aware of the warmth of her hand and the intensity of her gaze. It had been a long time since anyone had thanked him with such genuine feeling, longer still since he allowed himself to form a connection with someone that went beyond professional necessity. You saved us both with that shield enhancement, he finally said. Consider us even. Lyra seemed about to say something more when the door to the recovery room slid open, and Dr. Asan returned, accompanied by Director Reeves. I apologize for the interruption, Reeves said, noting their clasped hands with interest before they separated. But we've just received some rather urgent information that concerns you both. Reed straightened, instantly alert. What kind of information? The hegemony has declared both of you priority targets, wanted for crimes against the state, Reeves explained. They've disseminated your identities throughout the sector, with substantial rewards for information leading to your capture. That's not unexpected, Lyra said. They've been hunting me for months. This is different, Reeves insisted. They've specifically linked you to the theft of dangerous biological agents that pose a significant public health risk. They're positioning you not as fugitives, but as terrorists. Reed's expression darkened, setting the stage for more aggressive pursuit. If they can convince neutral systems that we're a public health threat, then even non-hegemony worlds might cooperate in our capture, Lyra finished grimly. It's a clever move. There's more, Reeves continued. Our intelligence suggests that Inquisitor Vex has been granted extraordinary powers for this operation. He's been authorized to use any means necessary to secure your capture and the return of the alleged biological agent. The implications were clear. Vex would no longer be constrained by normal protocols or jurisdictional limitations. The hunt was about to become much more dangerous. How secured is this facility? Reed asked. If Vex managed to track us to the Obsidian Dawn, our security measures are considerably more robust, Reeves assured him. This facility exists outside official records, and our stealth technology is generations beyond standard detection capabilities. For the moment, you're safe here. For the moment, Reed repeated skeptically, but not indefinitely. No location is secure indefinitely against a determined adversary with sufficient resources, Reeves acknowledged, which is why we need to discuss next steps. Lyra needs time to recover, Reed insisted. Days, at minimum. I'm aware, Reeves said, and she'll have that time. But we should use it to develop a plan for afterward. He looked between them, including the retrieval of the enzyme sample from Noveria Station. Lyra's eyes narrowed slightly. You want to help us recover it. We want to ensure it doesn't fall into hegemony hands, Reeves corrected. And given the increased security and attention now focused on both of you, returning to Noveria would be exceptionally dangerous without support. He had a point, Reed had to admit. With the hegemony now publicly hunting them as terrorists, their faces would be known to every security officer and bounty hunter in the sector. Moving undetected would be significantly more challenging. What kind of support are you offering? Reed asked. Resources, intelligence, possibly operational assistance, depending on the plan developed. Reeves spread his hands. We have people who specialize in exactly this kind of extraction. It was tempting. Having Cerberus's resources behind them would significantly increase their chances of success. But it would also mean sharing the location of the enzyme with an organization they still knew relatively little about. We'll consider it, Reed said, making the decision for both of them. But for now, Lyra needs rest, and I need to check on my ship. Reeves nodded, accepting the temporary dismissal. Of course. Dr. Isan will continue to monitor Ms. Vosh's recovery, and you have full access to the facility. When you're ready to discuss further, I'll be available." After they departed, Reed turned back to Lyra, who was watching him with a thoughtful expression. "You don't trust him," she observed. "I don't trust easily," Reed corrected, "especially when the stakes are this high. But he's right about one thing. Going back to Noveria just got a lot more complicated." "We don't have to decide now," Lyra said, visibly tiring from the conversation. "As you said, I need time to recover, and you need to verify Cerberus's claims." Reed nodded. "Rest. I'll check on the Windward and do some digging into our hosts. We'll talk again when you're stronger." As he left the medical facility, Reed's mind was already working through their options. Cerberus offered resources and protection they desperately needed, but at what cost? And could they truly afford to turn down such assistance, given the forces now arrayed against them? The answers weren't clear, but one thing was certain. Their path forward had just become considerably more dangerous, and the choices they made in the coming days would have consequences that extended far beyond their own survival. The final stand. 3 days passed at the Cerberus facility, while Lyra recovered and Reed conducted his own investigation into their hosts. The more he learned, the more his initial skepticism gave way to cautious respect. Cerberus appeared to be exactly what they claimed: a well-organized network of former hegemony personnel who had broken away over ethical concerns, now dedicated to monitoring and occasionally intervening in the most egregious hegemony operations. Their resources were impressive: advanced medical facilities, cutting-edge technology, and most importantly, an intelligence network that rivaled any official agency. Through this network, they received confirmation of what had happened aboard the Obsidian Dawn after Reed and Lyra's escape. Captain Kinseth survived, Reeves informed them during a briefing in Lyra's recovery room. Her strength was returning rapidly, though the medical team still monitored her bioelectric field closely. She managed to reach an escape pod during the confusion and was recovered by one of our auxiliary vessels. She's currently recuperating at another facility. "And the rest of her crew?" Reed asked, remembering the people who had risked their lives to help them escape. A shadow crossed Reeves's face. "Losses were significant. The Phantoms showed no restraint once they realized you had escaped with Ms. Vosh. The Obsidian Dawn itself was severely damaged, but remains salvageable." The news landed heavily. More lives lost in the increasingly deadly game surrounding Project Ascension and Lyra's research. "What about Vex?" Lyra asked, her expression hardening at the thought of the Inquisitor responsible for the attack. "He's gone to ground temporarily, but our intelligence suggests he's assembling a specialized task force for the next phase of the hunt." Reeves activated a holographic display showing security footage from various locations across the sector. "The hegemony's propaganda machine is in full swing. Your faces are appearing on security bulletins throughout their territory and beyond." The footage confirmed his assessment. Reed and Lyra's images appeared on public safety announcements, labeled as dangerous fugitives transporting hazardous biological materials. The hegemony had constructed a narrative that painted them as terrorists threatening public health, rather than escapees from an illegal research program. "They're setting the stage for extreme measures," Reed observed, "creating justification for actions that would otherwise violate interstellar treaties." "Precisely," Reeves agreed, "which is why we need to move quickly once Ms. Vosh is fully recovered. The longer the enzyme sample remains on Noveria, the greater the risk that someone will discover it, or that the hegemony will simply quarantine the entire station in their search." Lyra had finally shared the exact location of the enzyme with both Reed and Reeves. It was hidden in a maintenance sector of Noveria Station, concealed within an environmental control junction and protected by a biometric lock keyed to her genetic signature. The hiding place was ingenious. The enzyme container was masked as a standard regulatory module, indistinguishable from dozens of others, to anyone not specifically looking for it. "I've been developing a retrieval plan," Reed said, bringing up his own holographic display. Based on the intelligence Cerberus has provided, security on Noveria has been significantly enhanced since our escape. The hegemony has assigned additional forces, and station authorities are conducting random biometric scans throughout the public areas, making a direct approach by either of you impossible, Reeves noted. Exactly, which is why we need a third party, someone without known connections to us who can move freely on the station. Reeves manipulated the display to show a new figure. Someone like this. The hologram showed a woman in her early 30s with sharp features and a confident bearing. Her simple, practical clothing suggested a spacer, someone who lived and worked on vessels traveling between systems. Juno Reese, Reed introduced. Independent courier with legitimate business on Noveria. More importantly, she's a former colleague of mine from before my hegemony days. Someone I trust. Reeves studied the image with interest. She's not in any of our databases. That's by design, Reed explained. Juno specializes in staying off official records. She runs a legitimate courier business, but occasionally handles more sensitive deliveries. She's reliable, discreet, and most importantly, has no known connection to me in any official records. The hegemony won't be watching for her. Can she handle the biometric lock? Lyra asked. It requires my specific genetic signature. Reed nodded. That's where Cerberus's resources come in. We need to synthesize a genetic key based on your DNA that Juno can use to unlock the container. Our medical team has already been working on that, Reeves confirmed. Using samples taken during Ms. Vosh's treatment, we can create a temporary genetic masking agent, essentially a film containing her genetic markers that can fool the biometric lock. It won't last long, perhaps 10 minutes, but it should be sufficient for the retrieval. If your courier friend can get it to the right location undetected, Lyra added, still looking uncertain. Juno can handle it, Reed assured her. I've already made contact through secure channels. She's en route to rendezvous with us at the coordinates I've arranged.